Okay, good evening, Facebook, and welcome to day 4 of Hard Conversations with Queen Wheeler, my very special guest and dear friend. Queen has just really generously gifted her time and her wisdom and her experience to us these last 4 days, and also in a previous series as well that she did for, I believe, was it a 7-day
Yes, that
experience?
was a 7 day. That was a
Okay,
7 day.
with a slightly different, like some different topical areas.
Yeah.
And it's just been really exciting and super eye-opening and super surprising and super rewarding to be a part of this collaboration with
hmm
you. I'm just brimming over with gratitude and discovery and all of the things. And I think many of the people who have tuned in hopefully are feeling the same way. At the end of today's discussion, we are going to give you some avenues for continued teaching with Queen. So please stay tuned for that. And we can drop it in the comments too, just about how to stay connected to this material, how to support Queen as she continues to do this work. And yeah, and also how to just continue to have resources for yourself as you stay in this journey. And so tonight we have one more like topical area to cover in this educational series. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to turn it over to Queen, and feel free to introduce and whatever you want us to know about you, and hit it.
Hey, I'm Queen. um, First of all, thank you to your listeners, those who are on your platform and your groups, your friends, your frenemies, whoever it is that, because we got the haters out there too.
Mm.
Whoever it is that takes the time to listen in. I always take it very seriously when people give me their ear and their time, because they don't have to. This world is so noisy right now,
Mhm.
right? So noisy right now that you have plenty of things that you can listen to. Not
Mhm.
only do you have plenty of things you can listen to, but the truth of the matter is you could listen to all things that support what you already are.
The
And
echo
so
chamber. Mhm.
I applaud those of you whose ears are feeling like they are on fire as we talk, but you continue to listen, right? Because you know that you want something different and that you need to be a part of this discussion in a real, authentic way, with eyes wide open, ears wide open, regardless of how ugly it gets and how loud and screechy and cringing it sounds. So, so that's the first thing I want to say is thank you for hanging in there listening. We, as Leah mentioned, I did another series with Amy last week. We ended on Friday. That was a 7-part series, and we were discussing white people facing race and the myths that keep racism in place. And that was a paper done by Dr. McIntosh. Um, and this week we're working on a paper done or a study done by Dr. Nichols.
Mhm.
So if you want to hear those hard conversations from last week, which they were juicy and have some
Oh
really
yeah.
good, I mean, it hits every part of uh, the white myth, the white privilege, the whole structure of
Mhm.
racism,
Mhm.
and the inner racism as well as the outer racism. So you can find that at hardconversations.live. I encourage you to go there and listen to those as well. You can listen to the other ones that we've done in this series over the last 3 days, 3 days,
Yeah. Yeah.
since Monday.
Yep.
Those are on Leah's page. And then once we're done with the series, they will also be at hardconversations.live. One of the things that Leah mentioned is, if you want to follow on with me as we have these hard conversations, I will be having another series probably coming up next week. And I'm thinking, and Leah will share it on her page as well.
Yes.
I'm sure. I'll share it on my page.
Yeah.
Amy will share it on her page. So you'll still be able to track us with these hard conversations. So you can send me a friend request or just do whatever you do on Facebook to get on somebody else's page. Mine, I believe, is public anyway. So you can go on there and see there. But what I want to make clear is this. One of the very important things about doing this work is to know your lane, to know where you are, where you need to go, and how and what tools you're going to use to get there. That's very important. There are a lot of people out here right now that are jumping into the conversation that are ill-equipped and they're out of their lane. And it causes more confusion, more injury. Why? Because it causes people to obviously they start arguing and fighting and splitting hairs, and just ridiculousness is what it ends up being, right? So it's important to understand where you are, who you are, what your purpose is, where you're going, and what tools you're going to use to get there. Now, I know my lane. I am not the same as some of the other leaders who are out there helping on this front, right? I don't have a book that I've written, although maybe I will.
I was going to say, never say never.
Yeah, maybe I will, maybe I won't, right? I don't. My job is I am a coach full time. That's what I do. I do that. Like I said, full time, and my books are full. Right. I rarely have openings, but what I know is that what I bring to the table is the ability, the support and the facilitation of people becoming congruent with themselves, understanding themselves in a way that they see all of the not so pretty things.
Yeah.
And then figure out a way to come into congruence with themselves and to facilitate taking those things, turning them, transmuting them, and reintegrating, right? Because guess what? Nobody's asking you to give up parts of yourself. This is all like these. We're not asking you to give up parts of yourself, right? But to understand the parts of yourself so that you can understand then how to manage those parts, right? You know how to inform the parts that are ill-informed.
Right.
You know how to fill in the gaps where there are gaps, how to make the parts of you whole that are broken or cracked in some kind of way, right? And when I say broken and cracked, I mean broken and cracked due to bad information, due to traumas, right? Due to just growing up in this system right here. The fact that any of us in this type of system are able to function in a way in which we're not all out there in the middle of the street, butt naked, yelling and pulling our hair out, which I don't have that problem, but it's a mystery to me when you consider the mess that has gone on in this world and what we've done to each other, right? So I'm very clear what my role is, and that's what I do. So what I will be having a closed group, as she mentioned. I will be having a closed group that will be working with women who recognize, hey, I don't know what to do, but I know I need to do something. And the first step is to understand how this thing called racism has infiltrated, how it has affected how you think, how you feel, how you move, how you be. So the first thing is to understand how it works in or through you, right? So again, not taking it personal, but taking ownership of it and working that part out so that you don't go blow up your whole life because you didn't got your eyes open a little bit. And now you've created more problems. So now we got more stuff to fix on top of, now you're no good to the movement. because you're too busy
Exactly.
over there getting a divorce
Turning up more drama.
and not talking to your brother and just
Whatever it
creating too
might,
much
yeah.
drama, right? Creating too much stuff that you don't want,
Yeah.
So, and it's not, and let me, please hear me clearly on this. You turning against your family or your family turning against and y'all bickering and stuff, there's no virtue in that. There's no virtue in that, right? Because this is the thing, especially if you're white. I don't want you to do that. I need you to be able to communicate with your family because they're part of the 76% that we need to get it together so that we can abolish this stuff. Remember, blacks are 13.4%, whites are 76%. Y'all can fix it on your own because that's where the issue lies anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So we need the 76% to get, but if you're turning against each other and talking about I'm right, no, I'm right, and all that kind of stuff, and don't know how to communicate, and now you're not talking to your brother, not talking to your sister. Well, I need your brother and sister to get it together too.
You do.
So there's no virtue in you blowing up your life in order to prove that you're not a racist. Like, it doesn't work that way. So I will be facilitating a closed group to help you jumpstart your journey on this so that you can do it in a way that is aware, where you're aware of self, aware of where you are, who you are, all of that, what your blind spots are, all of that, right? So that you're aware of that and you don't go out here bleeding on people or injuring people or injuring your own psyche and injuring yourself, because that doesn't help the movement at all.
There is a particular kind of resiliency, emotional resiliency, that white women really need to work on building up so that we don't slide into defensiveness, fragility, white tears, or we leave the scene because things get too uncomfortable. And recognizing that we have that option,
right?
Because of that privilege. And so doing that, Amy just said, so no more trigger responses then on Facebook? While I have Amy, since you're here and listening, can you do me a favor, since I can't post in StreamYard? Will you please put Queen Wheeler's email address, and we'll say it again towards the end of tonight's discussion, where people can request to get on her waiting list for the program that she will launch after the next series of discussions.
So it'll be launching within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
So queen@queenwheeler.com. So it's pretty easy. My first name at my first and last name.com.
And then people can also message you here on Facebook in Messenger.
Yes, you can send it through Facebook Messenger as well.
And I would just add that it's perfectly okay to send those requests to be included in the following group. And then also, white women, we have the wherewithal, we have Google, we have a lot of ways to search out some reading resources and some other ways to just continue our process without overloading the teachers who are already busy, already giving their time freely in this discussion series. And just remember, there will be a container for you to do that, a really intentional container. And so just always respecting the time and the energy of your teachers.
Yeah. And and one of the things that I would suggest that you do in the interim, while we're going up to the beginning of the what is it, the course, whatever you want to call it. All right, while we're going up to that, is to go back and watch the other videos, because there's a lot of information in those. So that will keep you busy until then, right?
Yeah.
However, yes, there are plenty of resources out there. One of the things, though, that I will definitely, like, this is what I tell my clients, regardless of what you're talking about, whether you're talking about race or anything else. I use the rule of 5.
Okay.
There is no, once you start listening to more than 5 voices, things get
Oh, yeah.
confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I suggest is that you always have 2 voices. That's what you consider pulling you up,
Mm-hmm.
teachers, people that challenge your thinking, that cause you to expand, right?
Okay.
And then have 1 or maybe even 2 that are peers,
Sure.
right? So that you realize
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not in it alone.
I
Okay.
love that.
You
I
don't
love it.
you realize I'm not in it alone. And then 1 that is where you used to be, so that
Oh, the peer pulling up. Yeah.
it reminds you that you are not what you were, even though you're not where you're trying to go, right?
Love that.
So power of 5, the 2 pulling you up, giving you vision for the direction in which you're going and helping pull you there. 2 beside you, so that you remember I am not in this alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just me. And then 1 beneath you that you can help pull up, but it also reminds you that you are not where you were,
Mm-hmm.
right? It reminds you that you
Yeah.
are getting some traction. All right. So
Yeah. Because
power of
growth
5.
is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Growth
Yeah.
and change and transformation are completely possible.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
let me remind you as well, when I'm talking about that 5, those 5 voices, listen, that includes a voice is a voice is a voice. So that's whether you're listening to videos, whether you're reading books. If you're reading books, that's a voice. So if there's an author that you're reading, that count as 1. If you're
Mm-hmm.
watching
Yep.
videos of a person, that counts as 1, right? If you're listening to podcasts, that's another voice that counts as 1. So I don't mean listen to 5 different people on videos, read 5 different authors,
Right.
listen to 5 different, no, power of 5, 5 period across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will bog yourself down in confusion and conflicting thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
pulling you this way and that way, until you spin yourself out so much to where you say, I just need quiet. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what? That becomes the excuse for doing nothing.
True.
I just need quiet. I just need to step away for my own peace of mind. I just need to cut everything off, right? You overwhelm yourself. And mind you, overwhelming yourself is another way to justify non-movement.
Yes.
It's another way out. It's another
It's a
tool that you
story.
use
A
to
story, it's drama.
excuse,
Mm-hmm.
to create drama, to excuse you from taking ownership of moving forward. Okay, so that's my little 2 cents. So what we got tonight?
Okay, yes. Oh, and before I get into our table, if I will volunteer if anybody would like to private message me or say in the comments like, hey, can you suggest a few podcasts, books, whatever. I'm happy to share what I know about that to anybody who's curious. And I love me a good podcast, just saying. So, okay. So tonight, in our philosophical aspects of cultural difference, we are talking about process. And again, just for those of you who might be joining us tonight for the first time, because I am white, I am going to be representing the European, Euro-American ethnic group and worldview, and diving into that end. And then because Queen is Black, she will be handling the perspective or that worldview of the African American, Hispanics, and Arabs ethnic group. Just for review, there are 4 ethnic groups as outlined.
Can I interject?
I said that wrong, didn't I?
No, you didn't. You didn't say it wrong.
Okay.
However, it may sound redundant when you say because I'm white and because she's Black. However, listen, this is why I think that that's important though, right?
Okay.
I think that it's important because what it's telling y'all out there, Black people speak for Black people. White people speak for white people. Like you speak from your own experience.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You speak from your own experience. Now you will hear me commenting on the white experience from a psychological mindset or whatever, because that's part of the work that I do, right? Is that I get to be in I get insight into that, through working with people, through studies and all of that, through training, all of that. So I speak on it from that sometimes, and other times I speak on it from how I experience the whiteness as a Black person, but I'm still speaking from the space of a Black person. I'm not saying, well, white people this because I got a white friend who told me that. Well, my white friend, because white people are good for that. Well, my Black friend didn't think anything was wrong with it, and my Black friend said that, and my Black friends feel no. Don't try to talk for your Black friends.
Okay.
I'm not trying to talk for my white friends. Right.
That is it. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
I will speak up about how I experience whiteness as a Black person.
Okay.
So that might have sounded funny, like, yeah, you are white. Yeah, she is Black, but there is a message in that. So, okay.
Yes.
I'm not going to interrupt you again. You go ahead.
Oh, no. That's totally fine. So anyway, just to review, there are, as outlined by Dr. Edwin J. Nichols, there are 4 ethnic groups. European, Euro-American, it's number 1. Number 2, African, African-American, Hispanics, and Arabs. They all fit into the same worldview group in this line of study. Number 3, Asian, Asian American, and Polynesian. That's a different worldview. And then number 4, Native American. So we're not really focusing on Asian and Native American because neither of us are that.
Right.
So just to be clear, we're not excluding to exclude. We're excluding because that's not part of either of our experience. So now we're in the process category. And the 2 ways that each of these 2 world group or ethnic groups approach process is the European is through technology, where all sets are repeatable and reproducible. And the African, African-American, Hispanic, Arab group is a word that is entoology, and which means all sets are interrelated through human and spiritual networks. Okay.
I always think we have the cool ones. I'm like, dang, yeah, it's cool. Like,
you do.
Every time you read something, I'll be like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I know, right? It has a ring to it. And then the white ones to me are all just like sterile, square, very just linear, and that
mine feel all soulful. I'd be like, yeah, that's
and see, we were talking the other day about like how all those things are just different, right? Those worldviews are just different. There's no real hierarchy. It's just a different way to know things, to relate to other people, to have relationships, to find your identity. And yet, I was thinking a lot today about just each of those, the axology, the epistemology, the whatever the third one was, logic, which we talked about last night, and process. And I just thought, I'm not sure I really love the way that my people,
your people,
that my people, or that I, where I don't know that I love those worldviews. I don't know that I love them. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, well, we know what the negative, overbalanced, aspects of those worldviews look like in the white framework of racism. But I'm sitting there going, where is the good?
You know what? We're going to do one more. Let's do one more tomorrow, Friday.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about when it's underused, when it's overused, and when it's imbalance.
Because I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And and last night you were talking about, you can look at those 4 worldviews and you can see yourself as deficient in like the other 3 that you're not, or and that's kind of the way I was thinking about it. And like, okay, well, how can I change and how can I, expand to include these other worldviews and whatever? And I do think it's important to expand your knowledge of them. And yet you were like, you know what? If I need somebody who really loves data and is going to provide me with a polarity view, I'm not going to try to cultivate that really in myself. I'm just going to call an expert.
Yeah.
And somebody who naturally gravitates toward that. And so I was just really just chewing on all of that today and just like, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for how white people approach the work of anti-racism? And yeah, I've just like all of these conversations have my brain so busy this week, which I think is good. And sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, I can wrap my head around that. And sometimes I feel confused, and sometimes I feel sad and like, oh my God, this is so big. We're never going to change it, And so that's what's just been going on in my head. And as we talk about process, what immediately came up for me, and we were kind of discussing this in a separate group earlier, was the white people want a lot of rules and procedures around the work of anti-racism, so that we can do the right thing, repeat it, because again, going back to that, repeatable and reproducible, and then just like churn out similar stuff and reproduce it, and then everything will be fixed. And rather than getting to the feeling part, the taking it from here to here. And so that for me, that's one connection or one example I make of process and the way Euro-American people approach that. So yeah. What you got?
I don't know. Let's see. I told you that's why doing it this way is unnerving, because I told Leah before we got on here, I was like, I don't know if I'm like, you're going to ask a question and I'll be like, I got nothing. Like, who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. But when you talk about cultivating something versus utilizing somebody who's already cultivated that and it's in their wheelhouse, it's in their lane, then it all makes more sense. Because one of the things that you just said was, you think about, well, when you look at your cultural axiology, as epistemology, logic, and process, that you feel like it's pretty linear and just flat.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay to enjoy that, right? It's okay to enjoy that. But what will take it to the next level so that you feel like it's full is you don't live your whole life just in that and with that around you, right? So that's like saying you're going to eat broccoli every single day for every meal all the time.
Oh God, nightmare.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus if you think about when you just read the Euro group, and then you read the African American across the board, right? Then you know how to fill out certain parts so that you feel like you have this beautiful garden salad versus just broccoli.
Yeah.
Right?
Of lenses or worldviews.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So for instance, I may bring to this, well, we're doing it right now.
Okay.
We're doing it right now.
Okay.
So now this, but in order to say this, it's gonna make me sound kind of egotistical. But I
Go
got
for it.
but it's but
Let
it's
your
how it's
ego
working out.
flag fly. Come on.
Okay. So here we are, right? I'm bringing my sauce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bringing this soul, right? This soul,
Yeah.
this different way of viewing things and different way of viewing people and how it works together and all of that. I'm bringing that. You're bringing the technology. You're bringing the delivery of the thing, right? You're adding to it by that, keeping things on track, on time, going right, right.
That is a strength
Because
for
even
me.
yesterday, when I was late, when I jumped on, the reason I ain't had my lip gloss on, I thought once I jumped on, we was gonna chat before we hit live. Well, I jump on. No, you started on time. You like, she'll be here. She'll be here.
I did. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna vamp, I guess, for a few minutes because people have expectations.
Right.
And I need to make sure I'm living up to that. And
Right.
what the hell are people gonna think if we
Right.
don't start on time? I mean, like those are all my little
But
gremlins or
you
whatever.
played your part, right? You
Yeah.
played your part. And I play my part. And because we're doing it together, it ends up being a well-rounded, flavorful, yet
Yeah.
structured experience.
Okay, I have a burning question I have to ask you because I
What
really
is it?
want to know what you think about this. Okay, and this kind of speaks to the way in which I grew up, where in my town there was at that time, right? I think things have changed a little bit since 44 years ago, but at that time, my community was so white. Like there was this much diversity. There were two kids that were people of color that I grew up with, like in my whole grade that I remember of, elementary school kids or whatever. And so if we have anybody in our audience, or for anybody who hears this who lives in like a rural community, or even conversely, like a really it's like a still segregated community, either consciously or covertly, like however that plays out. But if you're in a community where you only have people around you who look like you, how does somebody begin to break through and open up and allow in those other lenses when they're not like readily available to you in the flesh?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because the truth is, looking at the data on how the makeup of America, there are plenty of people who are living like that, who are still living in a very much white world, because they're 76%. Right.
Yeah.
So there's
exactly.
plenty of places in America, even though many of us cannot imagine that because we think every place looked like our place. Right.
Right.
And I'm in a military community. So, military community, you would think that the world looks like this, but it doesn't.
Right.
It looks like a mixture of all peoples and all that, but that's not out in the real world. So there are plenty of people, like when my husband went to basic training, he was in basic training with white boys who had never seen a black or brown person.
Yeah, I believe it.
They found him very curious, right? And that wasn't too long ago, right? So, all things considered, that wasn't too long ago. And he was there with kids that were like amazed, like, oh wow, I've never seen a black person before. So there are plenty of people living like that in rural America and in planned America.
Right,
It's
exactly.
planned like that. Trust me, how it's mapped out, it was planned that way. People didn't just happen to know. Covenants are written in a certain way. Zoning is written in a certain way. These things are planned. These aren't happenstance, like, oh, you should live over there if you wanted to. Please, come on. We got too much information, too much data to keep on living in that type of thinking, and to still believe that everybody is free to move as they want in this United States. Okay. But anyway, yeah, there are plenty of people like that. However, with technology, right, which is how you process, with technology, you can be with other groups without ever seeing other groups, meaning you can read books by Black authors through the lens of the Black experience. You can watch movies by Black directors or people who have used Black storytellers to inform their directing, so that it's seen through the Black lens and it tells the truth through the Black lens of the Black experience, right? So there's so many ways now that you can widen your world without having to be in front of a person.
Yeah.
But it takes choice. It takes going after it. It takes committing yourself to broadening your world. Now, I think part of the challenge comes in when you have no incentive in broadening your world, because that means that you will have to possibly share or possibly change your way of life or your way of talking or your way of speaking, your way of behaving, right? When people don't have incentive in changing their way of being, trust me, I think a lot of people are holding on to racism because they just don't want to change how they behave and how they speak. And they know that their language is riddled in it, and they feel like they have a right to speak how they want to speak and behave how they want to behave and tell the jokes they want to tell and not be around people if they don't want to be around people. And, you know, all of that, they feel like that is their right. And so they're bucking up against change because they don't want to change, not necessarily because they give a damn about whether Black people are included or not included. They just don't want to change as an individual. They don't want their life, they want their life to be encroached upon.
Well, and that speaks, again, that goes right back to the worldview of we want sets that are repeatable, reproducible. And I'm sure there's a large piece of that is just part of the human psyche in general. Like, none of us maybe really love change, especially as we get older. You know, I think you can probably find some science to document that just from a, you know, human. That's kind of true,
you know,
but
that's an interesting. Yeah. Okay. So the concept of nobody likes change. That's something that I think white America would do with really educating yourself on.
Okay.
Meaning how much non-white people have had to change in this country. How many times they have been displaced from where they live and moved out in order for white people to be there. So literally over and over again, we see through history where, and we call it gentrification today. Right? We call it gentrification today, but we see time and time again over history where a Black people will plant themselves somewhere and begin to build.
Okay.
The white community will be in the city, right?
Yeah.
And then once they decide, okay, we want to move to the suburbs, then they move the Black people out of the suburbs so that they can go there. The Black people end up in the city. And then right now, you see white people are saying, I want to go to the city again.
Right.
So now Black people are being displaced from the city and moves back into rural places, sometimes far away from their home. right? Far away from what they've known. But they have to, how do they do it? They do it through pricing,
Yep.
right? Zoning, lending practices, all of that. They devalue land so that it can be bought easily and then raise the value. You know, once whites move in, they bring incentives so that white people can move in. So they lower the tax, like you'll get a tax break or whatever, come in and fix up these houses or whatever.
Or businesses, like especially, you know, big corporations, there's a lot of tax incentive there as well.
So we'll give you tax incentive. We'll give you come in, you fix it up. We raise the value. Now the people who live around there can no longer afford to live there. So now they're displaced. Where do they go? You know, who knows? They go wherever they can go. But it happens over and over again. So we're going through a perpetual state of change constantly in this country.
So again, like you just keep helping me to uncover blind spot after blind spot of how much my perspective is steeped in every corner in racism and white supremacy. There's nothing that it doesn't touch in my perspective. Nothing, not one thing. So my assumption that people of color, because we're all part of the human existence, also don't want change.
Right.
You know, like that's just, and also one thing you were talking about, which I just find to be like fascinating and disturbing all at the same time. There is this, I was listening to a documentary, I think it was on NPR. So for anybody who wanted to like go search it out. But there is science that establishes that there is a comfort threshold for when white flight begins to happen. And I think it's somewhere, and again, I like somebody would need to fact check me on this because I may not be quoting it accurately, but I believe that percentage is that when the population or the number of Black people in any area, whether that's a neighborhood, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a like a suburb, whatever, when that reaches 15%, or somewhere around 15%, that's when white people start looking around and going, hey, what's going on? Do we need to move? You know, look what's happening to the neighborhood. And I just found that to be like, really? Wow. Just like, you know, disturbing and fascinating at the same time. And I'm not sure what my point was there, but just what you were talking about.
When you get into that, I know Amy is on here, so she can put something in the comments about this. We made her our moderator.
I know, right? Thank you, Amy.
We're giving her a job, but she can put something in the comments because she knows where it comes from. Okay, she might have said it actually. I don't know if I was in conversation with her, but anyway, what came up was, or I think I read it. I don't know. But anyway, how the way that white people even look for schools.
Oh, okay.
They look for schools based off of how many Black kids are in the school, how many Black and brown kids are in the school. Because if there are a lot and they deem it as a Black school, they don't send their kids there.
Sure.
They automatically assume that it's a underperforming school, or it's a school that's going to be full of violence, or it's a school that's right. So they base the quality of the school off of how large the white population is. Right. And so then all of the money ends up going to what? The schools with the white population.
Yeah.
And it ends up being a segregation because the other schools end up being a population of Black kids, not because there are no white kids that can go there, but because that's intentional. If it has a certain percentage of Black kids, then white parents are not going to send their kids there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
they look at that when they're looking at schools.
So I'm just I'm getting a couple of notes here from Amy. She's saying Randy is on, and it looks like she just wanted me to let you know that.
Oh, okay.
And then she just posted a link to an article, a New York Times article piece entitled
Okay.
"Whose Neighborhood Is It?"
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That may be what it is right there. But yes, definitely that's one of the things that are looked at. And the thing is I think it's looked at it's so ingrained that it's not thought about like come in and go, how many Black people are here? No, it's ingrained. So
Mhm.
you're automatically like your instinct is to look around and see what the percentages are.
To confirm your
Mhm.
bias. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Confirm it.
You're looking for it. You're looking for it in the school system. You're looking for it wherever you are because you've been conditioned to believe that if there's a high count of Black people, Black and brown people, then the quality is lower,
Mhm.
right? And then you have teachers who do the same thing.
Okay.
And therefore now the thought is that the lower quality teachers are at the schools with the Black and brown kids if there's a high percentage of Black and brown kids. And so it's perpetuated so finely through these systems, whether it's the
Mhm.
education system or the health system or any other system, right? You just assume that, like, say for instance, if you're in a city and the city has more than one hospital,
Mhm.
you're going to assume that the hospital with the higher population of Black people is not going to be of quality. Why? Because probably you're going to assume that it's going to be mostly Medicaid or Medicare used there, right? There's going to be some kind of subs, and therefore not as much money is funneled into that hospital. Therefore, not the top surgeons, the top doctors, the top whatever are not pulled to that hospital, right?
Mhm.
They're going to go to the other. So it is ingrained in the system, in every part of the system, for Black people to be underserviced, right? And devalued and
Yeah.
undervalued. It's throughout the system.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm just affirming the facts of what you're
Right.
saying. I don't really have a big response to that other than to say yes. I observe the same thing.
Mhm.
And there is this like I almost want to say what's coming up for me is like wanting to call out this fear or discomfort about othering,
About what?
othering.
Ah.
And so when white people feel like there's a chance they may be put in an other category,
Mm.
um, they just flee. I'm out of here.
Mhm.
I'm out of here. And what makes me say that is not only your statements about schools and other, like hospital systems and places like that, but even in restaurants or bars or dance clubs or places like, places for leisure and entertainment. There is that threshold again that I heard about from this docu-series or whatever it was that I listened to, where it's like when there starts to be a certain percentage of whatever population you're around, you automatically just start getting uncomfortable with it if you're white.
Mhm.
Or at least that was the focus of the study. And I'm trying to think of a time in my life where I have felt as the other. I've been in a position to be the other. And the closest I can come is, okay, the only example I can provide is a gender example where when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s or something, and I had gone out to a local club where I liked to dance, and I was by myself, and at one point I found myself like sitting at the bar, and all of a sudden there was a circle of men around me, surrounding me. And I all of a sudden, like, my hackles were up. I was really conscious of my gender. Like, oh God, I am literally the only woman here. And this is weird and scary.
Welcome to the Black world.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
and so then that makes me think, oh my God, what would that be like to experience 24/7, 365?
Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting thing with that type of thinking, because I saw, I'm trying to, well, even in my local place, you know, there was talk like the city council. The city council was pretty much all white, and then all of a sudden it flipped, and it was pretty much all black.
Huh.
Now nobody thought to themselves, or at least spoke up, who wasn't black.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe all of these white people are on this city council.
Right, right. Yeah.
But
nobody says that.
but now that there are so many blacks on there, there have been a lot of comments off of things are done just because they're black.
Right.
You know, and they're sticking, and blacks doing something just for the blacks, or that was never, they, you know, there was no accusations like that when,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or when you see a board and they're all black, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, well, they have a black board. I never hear anybody go, oh, well, they have a
They have a
white board.
whiteboard. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's very interesting how white people can feel othered if they're not in control.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that there isn't more of them in the room, but if they even look, if it's 500 of them in the room and there's 10 people at the front table on in leadership and they're all black, a white person will feel othered.
Yes.
500 to 10 and they'll still feel othered.
Because it's not repeatable and reproducible from their
It
experience.
has to do with power, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because again, I don't know if we did it, and I'm getting the series mixed up. I'm not sure if we did in this series, if we talked about it or if we talked about it last week. It was a myth of how it is assumed that white people should be in power. That's an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
The assumption is white people should be in power, and any person of color who is extraordinary, out of the ordinary than their group. So they have to be way above, they more than one cut above the rest, right? Somebody who's so extraordinary that you can't deny them.
Like Barack Obama or
Barack Obama. Yeah.
Or
right.
Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
Or
yeah. Like that. So very interesting.
I want to go back because we're kind of coming up on 8 and I still want to have some time to talk about this. So we've done a lot of talking about the European, white, Euro-American, you know, process with technology where we really want repeatable, reliable information that's
No,
reproducible
it
ad
doesn't have to be
nauseum.
reliable. It's just got to be repeatable.
Yeah, and repeatable.
Listen, according to what we just learned over this last 4 years, it does not have to be reliable. It just needs to be
Fair point.
repeatable. Because if you repeat it enough, then you rely upon it. That's
yeah,
that's
exactly. Well, yeah, and that was kind of the connotation I was going for.
Yeah.
Repeatable and reproducible. So we don't want anything in the power structure to change. I'm really curious about how your interpretation of the entoology, the African American process viewpoint, where all sets are related through human and spiritual networks. So how would you define, in your words?
Everything affects everything.
Okay.
Everything affects everything. If I'm suffering, then we are suffering.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If one group experiences bias or racism, then we all do.
Yeah, we're all connected.
Yeah, because the truth is, if they get them, they coming for you next. That's just the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, I don't know why people think that you can have a hard stop. That's the interesting thing to me about this racism game, right? This racism game. I'm like, come on, people. Like, let's get it together. Let's open up our eyes. Okay. Racism cannot be compartmentalized. The effects of racism. Now, the racism can be directed at African Americans, which it has been.
Yeah.
But it can't be compartmentalized when you put it in a system. So all of the white people who feel so high and mighty about being supreme.
Okay.
You right next to that black person in the welfare line. You are under the poverty level because it cannot be compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. You cannot put poison in something and not expect for it to spread throughout. That's like putting yeast in dough. Just because you put a little yeast in there, it works its way through all of the dough.
That's such a great analogy.
So here you are, impoverished, made to believe, like literally made to believe that you are superior, that you are middle class or upper middle class, when all you have to do is look at the data and it will show you that most of us are upper poverty. We don't really have a middle class in this country.
Not anymore.
Mm-hmm. You're either at 1% who has this
everything,
this much of the
yeah,
I can't even put it in, who has a large piece of the pie, a little sliver of those who would be considered middle class, and the rest of us, even those of us who have nice, beautiful houses, drive nice, beautiful cars, we are upper, lower class. We are right there above the poverty line, like literally right there. And guess what? Miss COVID-19, right? Miss Rona came in and was like, let me show y'all where you really are.
Yeah.
Now in this country, it shows, if you read any of the economic stuff, I read the headlines and then skim through because you know it ain't exactly my thing, but I want to stay aware. If you read that, it will show you that the debt in this country, the credit card debt, spiked during Miss Rona. Miss Rona came and people had to go out and buy toilet paper for some reason because they were going to poop more during the Rona. So they had to go out and buy toilet paper. Well, guess what? They had to use credit cards to do that. Rona let you know that you ain't middle class, honey. You are using plastic. You're not middle class. You didn't have cash to do that. You are upper, lower class. Rona is showing us that. But this racism, this superiority game, have even those who are poor believing that they're not. believing that they were able to get away from racism, the effects of racism. No, the effects of racism is blind. It will take down everything unless you kill it. If you don't cut the head off the snake, all of us are going to be at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Right? All of us are going to be at the bottom of the barrel. And that little 1% is probably going to shrink to, even 0.5% owns most of everything.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to hit, because I said the bottom of the barrel, and I know we're getting close to time, but anyway, one of the things that I was talking to Amy about, we didn't mention Amy about 50,000 times. We should have probably just put her on here. But anyway, we were having a conversation, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, but one of her kids was talking about, really grappling with divisiveness and, because there are other groups that are also suffering and are being discriminated against, or, like the LBGT community and things like that, transgender community, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is the reason why the focus is on Black Lives Matter, however you want to say it, whatever slogan you want to use, right?
Yeah.
Because we know, based off of what we've seen in this country, how this country started and all that, that when you get to the Black male and the Black female, you are at the bottom of the barrel, right? You're at the bottom. So if you focus on the bottom, everything above it, you have to touch on the way down.
Okay.
So if you can pull up the bottom, everybody comes up with it.
True.
So by everybody focusing on this one, it will naturally pull everybody
up. Yeah. Yeah. I love that's such a good visual. Like that is something I can actually see in my head. So if we, take this big hand of support or help or dismantling or, whatever you want to call it, and reach in and grab the shirts of the Black man and the Black woman, we come up and catch everybody else who is somewhere else on that hierarchy we've imposed.
Because what one of the things that, and this is to give you an example of how that has happened in history. Okay. One of my friends, she was doing her she just got her PhD. And while she was doing her studies, one of the things that she had to study is the benefits of the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And what came out of that study when she did her research, and the question was, who benefited most from the civil rights movement? So remember the barrel. You've got the Black man down at the bottom of the barrel. So the civil rights movement reached down in the barrel to grab the Black man and pull him up. And just like that game in the arcade with the claw that you go down and try to grab the bear and whatever. And first it grabs a whole bunch of stuff, but by the time it comes up, there's only one little dinky thing that's on there. Never the expensive one, but just one little dinky thing. Well, imagine that with the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was that claw. It went all the way down deep in the bottom to grab the Black man and come up. And as it came up, it had everything in it, and everything drop. And guess what came up in the claw?
Tell me.
The white woman. The group that benefited most from the civil rights movement was the white woman.
That, like, you say that, and I'm going, duh, of course.
Yeah.
I never connected that before.
Yeah. Was the number one recipient of benefit from the civil rights movement. and we're still fighting.
Yeah.
Because we didn't come up in it, but what said is, well, we gave you did. You got, no, we got some concessions, but we didn't come up and we got some,
Right.
okay, here, we'll give you this. We'll throw this scrap at you. We'll scroll. No.
Yeah, crumbs.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But we didn't get equality. We didn't get economic equality and opportunity. We didn't get any of that. So
Yeah, which I like that. So then that leads me to believe that if white women were the primary benefactor
mhm.
from the whole civil rights movement, then it behooves us to go in and be the next claw.
Come on now. You said it. The white woman said it. So there you go.
So I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
and then the puzzle piece is, how do I make my claws stronger?
Mhm. And that's why I'm jumping in with facilitating this group, because
Yeah.
yes, how do you make your claws stronger? How do you strategically listen,
Mhm.
y'all? This is psychological warfare we're in right now.
Yeah.
We're in psychological warfare. You got to get this together. You got to get this congruent, right? You got to get all of this together. And so we got to be strategic about it at this point.
Yeah.
We've got so much technology that we've got to be strategic about it, because those little worms,
Mhm.
we've got to be strategic about how to see them, capture them, kill them, get out the bugs, get out all these offshoots, right? All these offshoots. With all this technology we have, there's been a lot of offshoots, different ways that it changes its face and morph and all of that kind of stuff. So we have to be strategic about it.
And I would also project too that, and I didn't want to use this word, but patriarchy, elements of the patriarchy that actively strive to create division among white women as well. Because that, like, part of my inner dialogue has been, God, if there weren't so many opportunities for division among white women, religion, conservatism, liberalism, your view on abortion. I mean, that's a major polarizer in white female populations.
Uh-huh.
Like, if we could sideline those things for a minute, not downplaying anybody's viewpoint on that. I'm not trying to start another division here, but like, it just makes me wonder, what kind of effing power could we have if we could get on the same page about anti-racism.
Yeah. And the truth is, you don't have to agree on a whole lot of things.
Mm-mm.
You just have to agree on that one thing. Agree on it enough to do something about it. The other stuff, when you're doing that work, again, that's reaching to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
When you're doing that work, it will clear up some of the other stuff for you.
So the biggest hurdle I see from my armchair over here is just admitting that we have racism.
Mm-hmm.
Admitting that we have racism.
That you're wet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wet. That's all you're saying. Like, it does not have to be. It is serious, but we can't take it that serious where we're holding it to our chest, because we've got to be able to move, right? We've got to be able to move. So again, taking ownership of it without taking it too personal.
Well,
right?
I think it's a difference between people are really let me just personalize it for a minute and say, I don't want to identify with being a racist. Like, who wants to say, just, and I will say it, like, you gave me a thank you the other day for the way that I phrased people who were formerly enslaved, as opposed to the word slaves. Like one thing is an identity and the other thing is a circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's helpful to be able to surrender, because when you surrender and when you own something, then you can
So
start doing something
what would
about
be
it.
the circumstance? How would you express the circumstance of racism?
I have racism versus I am a racist. And that I don't know.
Now there are some people who are racist,
Oh, yes,
but I
yes.
don't think
I'm
it's
not
as many
discounting
as
that.
we think. I
Yeah.
don't think it's as many as,
Mhm.
that are true racist, right?
Right.
There are
Yeah.
some, but there are more people who have racism
Yes.
than who are racist.
Right. Because the racist is an identity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And nobody, well, not nobody, but like the majority of white people don't want to, like, we push that away. No, I'm not a racist. I mean, you hear that all the time. I'm not a racist, but,
Right.
you know, but whereas if we could come in and say, oh my God, I have a lot of racism that I didn't realize before, that I didn't see before, that I didn't understand before, that I wasn't conscious of before. If you can get to that place and say,
Treat it like a
wow,
virus. Yeah,
yeah,
treat it
I
like a virus.
have this.
Hell, I got
Mhm.
just like I got the Rona. Man, I got
Yeah.
the racism.
Yeah.
Like, dang, I got the racism. Man, my feet. I just realized that it ain't because I'm like real cute. I literally am hot. I got a fever. I got the racism.
Yeah.
Like it ain't got nothing to do with
Yes.
me being cute. I'm hot because I got a
Yeah.
fever. I got the racism. Like I don't care how you say it, how you own it, just own it,
Yeah.
so
Just
that
own
we
it.
can do something with it, right? So that
Mhm.
you can be part of uh abolishing it. You know,
Yeah.
that's the purpose of ownership,
Yeah.
is that when it's somebody else's, you can't do nothing about it.
Right.
But when you choose to own something, now I can do something about what I own.
Exactly. And I would say too, like, just a reminder of what you said earlier about staying in your own lane, because a lot of times, and I'm just going to relate this back to my recovery experience as well, because there are so many parallels here that I just find to be very encouraging, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, like, we, as an addict or as somebody who, participates in the 12-step recovery community, what often happens is you get somebody in and they will take that first step and say, I surrender. I'm powerless over whatever my addiction is, alcohol, drugs, and my life has become unmanageable. And so, like, there's a taking of that step
Right.
when you first come in. And then all of a sudden you just want to scramble and flail and do everything to freaking fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a slogan in the 12-step world, and it is awareness, acceptance, and then action. And so many of us want to just skip right past the acceptance piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would suggest that even though, yes, there needs to be action taken, more Black people do not need to die at the hands of police. Like, there is immediate need for action. I would also suggest that many of the people starting to embark upon this work, especially when they're white, kind of need to go, okay, I'm aware. I've gotten this new awareness. Now I need to sit for just a second in acceptance. And then
Because
if
you
I'm
gotta
going
know
to
what
take
you're
it,
aware of. That's the thing.
yeah,
That's part of the
yeah.
acceptance. It's like I got this new awareness, but you didn't sit with it long enough to listen to the awareness. Like, what is it
Right.
informing you of?
Yes.
You don't even know what you're aware of.
And
Yeah.
if there's any action to take, it's the listening action to Black people and what they want and what they need and what kind of support and what kind of change they're asking for. And the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not the end. Like, let's figure out ways to make that happen. But
Well, I was just going to say it's the beginning, because
yes, okay, yeah.
one of the things that I will be going over in this closed group, this facilitated group for white women who want to get into the thick of this, is the understanding of how to take in that information about what it is that Black people are saying, what the Black experience is, what Black people are asking for, all of that kind of stuff, then what do you do with that information?
Yeah.
And that's key. What you do with the information is key. And I think that's the missing piece, is people don't know what to do with the information. Well, I have what I believe is one part of what to do with that information, where it's strategic and impactful, without blowing up everything around you.
Yeah, without just like, oh my God.
Without causing more confusion, without getting on, trying to do conversations you are not equipped to have, without posting 50 million things a day out of just
guilt or
about how you feel and how you right. It's like, oh my gosh, you know. So anyway, again, you can email me at queen@queenwheeler.com to get on the waiting list, or you can message me on Facebook. Either way. And again, Leah, you can get to me on Leah's page, my page. Amy will have it on her page. We will come back tomorrow night, do one more session.
And I was just going to say, let's kind of just wrap it up, we'll kind of just put a little bit of closure on the week, on the experience itself. I feel like a good container needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But then what's the transition? What is the next container? And how do we continue the work? And how do we keep all breathing? And, so I'm just, once again, just thank you so much. Amy Gillespie Landhold is reminding me that tomorrow is Juneteenth. So happy Juneteenth.
It is.
For those people who don't know what Juneteenth is, do you want to say, or do you want me to say?
How you say? I want you. What is it?
So limited knowledge, but what I know of Juneteenth, it is the anniversary of the ending of slavery.
When they found out they were free.
Yes. Yeah.
Because remember, look, people are
there was no Facebook in 1865.
Yeah, people are always saying that, well, slaves got freed and emancipated on this day. And it's like, well, didn't nobody bother to tell this enslaved? That's the problem.
Yeah.
They didn't tell them, hey, you could go now. No, they kept on treating them like the enslaved.
Yeah.
Nobody told them. Right? It's like, okay, they free, but we're not gonna tell them. We're gonna keep this racket running. Right.
Right. So, for as long as we can.
Yeah.
And so that was the Juneteenth is the de facto emancipation of formerly enslaved people.
Juneteenth is the real 4th of July.
Okay.
And really, I don't even think we actually had a real 4th of July yet. Because again, from our process, if we weren't free, then America wasn't free.
No.
So how they had a 4th of July to celebrate freedom when there was no freedom here, I don't know.
Should be like, I want it to be 4th of July asterisk.
Right. For some. 4th of July, freedom for some. Absolutely.
All right, on that note, well, let's wrap it up, and we'll see everybody back here tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you.